Okay, so today we're going to talk about the Arudha Lagna in Vedic astrology with your sun in the third house. That's why I'm wearing my broad brimmed hat, because the brightness of the sun in the fifth house is very intense, because that's where the sun wants to be. The sun wants to be in the fifth house. The 10th house, the fifth house, the first house, third house, those are powerful placements for the sun. So, anyway, I'll take this off. So here's the deal. Your Arudha Lagna is the mount of your Lagna. What is your Lagna? In Vedic astrology, this is Vedic astrology, not Western astrology. Please don't try to apply this to your Western chart, because it won't be the same. Your Western chart has been calculated using the tropical zodiac, which is 24 degrees off. What it means is, when you're looking at your Western chart, when you look at the planets and the signs and all that, it's actually off by 24 degrees. That is not what was happening when you were born. Sorry. You need to look at things from the sidereal zodiac. The sidereal zodiac is actually the actual placement of the stars in the sky as it was hitting Earth when you were born. Right? And if you're going to look at something, you got to look at it done accurately. I'm sorry for all those that love Western astrology, but talk to anybody who used to be a Western astrologer, who then studied Vedic astrology, and you'll find there's a few out there. There's a couple of very notable astrologers who went through that, and they realized that Western astrology was off. Sorry. If you want to find out what your Vedic astrology is, you can go to astrology.thunderwizard.com. Again, subscribe, hit the bell button so you know when I put these videos up. So what is the Arudha Lagna? Your Lagna is your rising sign. Your rising sign is more important than your sun sign when it comes to your personality. Your sun sign is your inner experience of your ego, represents some other things. It's very important, but in terms of your personality, in terms of how your life will go, the karmas associated with it, your rising sign is most important. It changes every 15 minutes, so it's a snapshot. When you were born, you hit air out of the womb, you were stamped with the light of whatever sign was rising in the east. That gave you some glasses that your soul looks through. I was born a Leo rising sign, which means that I look at my life through the lens, through the glasses of a Leo. Yours is going to be whatever your rising sign is. Your rising sign is going to be different in Vedic than it is in Western as well. So you need to figure that out. All right, so today we're talking about what happens when your Arudha Lagna, which is the mount of your Lagna, the mount of your personality. We can call it the reflection of your personality. We can also call it the projection. What it means is that you have your own internal experience of yourself, and that's not what the rest of the world sees. Sometimes it's very close, but other times it can be completely opposite. For me, I've got Moon in Leo in the first house. That is my first house. That is my experience of myself. Now, I was born during the new moon, which means that my moon was basically dark. That gives me all kinds of moody things. It makes me feel insecure. It makes me feel all kinds of, things. And then I've got this Leo, so I've got this frustrated king who doesn't feel he has all this power. That's my experience of myself. That's not how I come across. My Aruta is Mars in the third house in Libra, which is, you've heard me talk about it before. It's a whole different deal. That's how people see me. No matter how I'm feeling, I walk down the street, people are going to see Mars in the third house. So you have your own projection. That is not necessarily how you feel about yourself. Today we're talking about what happens when you have Sun in the fifth house as your Arudha Lagna. Now there's a way to calculate it. If you know how to calculate your Arudha, what you do is you take a look at your first house and you look at the Lord of the sign of the first house. So let's say it's Sagittarius. So if you were born a Sagittarius, you would look and you would see, oh, Sagittarius, that's a Jupiter sign. You would look to see where Jupiter is. If Jupiter was in the third house, You would count 1, 2, 3. Then you would count the same number from your Lagna to that house. So that would mean, what is the third from the third? So the third from the third is the fifth. 3, 4, 5, fifth. If you go down there, boom, all of a sudden, bang, you've got Sun there in your fifth house. That's your Arudha Lagna. That's what people see. So I'm not going to get into signs and all that, because what sign the planet is sitting in is going to change everything. We're not going to deal with that. We're just going to talk about generally what it means. So first off, we need to understand that the Sun is very happy in the fifth house. We've got to put on our giant sun hat, because the sun is going to be shining very strongly in the fifth house. The fifth house is the natural home of the sign of the sun, which is Leo. So Sun loves being in the fifth house. So what is the fifth house? The fifth house is the house of the, a house of the projection, because it's the house of performance. Because what does the sun do? The sun, like the king, the queen, loves attention, loves to perform, loves to speak, loves, Leo always wants attention. Give me the attention. So this is a great placement for actors, for writers, for dancers, for musicians, for poets, artists' expression of any kind, because the fifth house is expression of art. It's also a great placement for having children, because the fifth house means creativity, meaning children, but it also means, creation of anything, creation of art. The fifth house is a house for writers, but it's not the same as the third house. The third house is a house for writers, but the fifth house is for writing big works of art that last for a generation. So, if you write War and Peace, and that's the only book you write in your whole life, that fifth house shows that. I'm third house, which means that I'm constantly writing, I'm constantly talking. It's reality TV. That's why I'm constantly coming onto YouTube. Fifth house is you've written something that will last, deep, meaningful stuff that will last through the test of time. And the fifth house also represents education, higher education specifically. It means like college education. It on a spiritual level, which is where its power really comes through, is the study of sacred written works like scriptures, mythology, ancient spiritual practices, mantra. This is also the fifth house shows mastery in mantra. So if you have this, it means that at the very least, people see you as somebody who can speak things into existence, that you have magical powers of speech. This is one of the things that the sun can give. So I've said that this is the king or the queen in the castle. This is the king or the queen when all of the subjects are gathered around, and the king or the queen is on the portico looking out and addressing. So this is a real place of power. It's a place where the sun shines really brightly. So the Arudha Lagna, in my experience, can show you what your work will be, what your career will be. Now, the fifth house is also a house that tells you what your career will be, and for that, we've talked about it. You look at the sign of the fifth house, and you look at the lord of that sign, and then you go see where that planet is. Right. So in mine, I've got Sagittarius in the fifth house. Sagittarius is a Jupiter sign, so I look to see where Jupiter is. Jupiter is in my 8th house in Pisces. What am I? Retrograde Jupiter is lightning. I've got a retrograde Jupiter in the 8th house. The 8th house is secret knowledge. Look at who I am. I'm the Thunder Wizard. You can find this out by looking at your astrology as well. So what you need to do if you have Sun in the 5th house is first you need to go and see what sign it's in, because if it's in a happy sign, it's going to be really strong. If it's in not as strong of a sign, then it's going to mean some different things. You also need to know what other planets are in there. Is Jupiter in there conjunct with the sun? Is Rahu in there conjunct with the sun? These are going to make huge differences. You also need to see what the aspects are. What are the other aspects of the planets aspecting the house? You put all of these things together and you create a costume for yourself. I'm wearing my costume right now. You can see it. I'm wearing a sleeveless shirt with a bunch of different things. Normally I'm wearing bracelets and all that kind of stuff. But that's because I am the spiritual warrior. So it's the shaved head and the beard and the, all that stuff. That's me showing off my costume. This is my Arudha. You have to find out what your Arudha is. So Sun in the fifth house, for one thing, is the bold king or the queen who's performing. So you have to decide, what does the king wear? What does the queen wear? And then you have to go out in public wearing that, because the sun is royalty and it's out there. It has no problem showing off who they are and their specific identity in the world. So if you have the Arudha in the fifth house, it could mean you're a teacher, it could mean you're a spiritual teacher, it could mean you're a spiritual practitioner, it could mean that you're an artist, it could mean a counselor. That would be a great placement for Sun in the fifth house, would be somebody who counsels from the wisdom of deep spirituality. So anyway, this is Sun in the fifth house, Arudha Lagna. If you don't know what yours is, go to astrology.thunderwizard.com and you can book a reading with either me or one of my apprentices. You'll save money if you get one from one of my apprentices. They'll let you know what your Arudha Lagna is, and then you can create your own costume, and maybe you'll find out what your career is as a result of looking at that. But no matter what it is you do for a living, go dressed as your Arudha and you will immediately gain respect from people. See, because here's the thing. If you're not projecting what your Arudha is shining out through you, then people won't trust you. People on an unconscious level know what your Arudha is and they think that's who you are. Right? So whatever your sign is in there is going to be what, for instance, let's say if your Arudha is, let's say your Arudha is Sagittarius. Just if Sagittarius was your Arudha Lagna, when you walk in the room, people think you're a Sagittarius. If your Arudha is Leo, they think you're a Leo. If your Arudha is Capricorn, they think you're a Capricorn. Because they don't experience your soul essence, they experience the light that bounces off of you when you walk in the room. So you need to know what that is. And for some of you, you are going to feel completely opposite from your projection. And I guarantee you, even if you feel completely opposite from that, it won't matter how you feel. If you show up in costume, they will respond to you that way. My Arudha is the third house, Mars in the third house. Mars in the third house is the house of a fighter, specifically somebody with the power to knock you out, because third house is hands. I am a martial artist. I've never, gone into the ring or anything like that. But when I did a movie, in 2000, I did a movie where I played a kickboxer, and I was, I have tiny bit of, at that time I did other kinds of martial arts, but I had a tiny bit of kickboxing experience. But I was playing opposite a guy who was, had tons of experience. In one of the scenes, I actually was fighting a guy who was a professional kickboxer. Both of those guys, when they met me, had this immediate respect and fear. And one guy was like saying, "Holy crap, I'm scared." Had nothing to do with my abilities, because I'm not a kickboxer. I'm a martial artist, but I'm not a kickboxer. It had to do with my Arudha. They were experiencing my Arudha. I didn't feel like it. I'm like, listen, I don't know crap about kickboxing. I wouldn't know what to do with these gloves, But that doesn't matter. What they saw is what they saw. You have your own experience. You feel like, I don't feel like the king in the castle. Doesn't matter. Whatever your Arudha is how people are going to experience you. If you show up and act like it, they will see you that way. They'll see you as somebody with authority, somebody with radiant, warm power. They'll see you as somebody creative and successful, because the sun in the fifth house is a very successful placement. They'll see you as somebody with deep spiritual knowledge. They'll see you as somebody who understands mythology and scripture and mantra. Okay? So if you go and act that way, regardless of what your job is, you will be successful. All right, that's it for me today. Next, we'll talk about the sun in a different Arudha. All right, talk to you guys soon.